The executioner's blade caught the first rays of dawn as Roxana knelt in the dirt, her wrists bound with silver chains that burned against her skin. Alpha Darius stood 20 paces away, his jaw set like stone, his dark eyes refusing to meet hers even as he raised his hand to give the final command. The entire pack had gathered in the execution grounds, their silence heavier than any scream, and she could feel their judgment pressing against her chest like a physical weight. This was it. The end. No mercy. No salvation. Just the cold bite of steel and the eternal darkness that waited beyond. If you're already hooked by Roxana's impossible situation, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story goes places you absolutely cannot predict. And tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug. Drop it in the comments. Now let's see how one mark changes everything. Roxana's breath came in shallow gasps, misting in the cold morning air. The execution ground sat at the edge of the packlands, where the forest met the clearing, where the ancient oak trees bore witness to every judgment passed down through generations. She'd walked these grounds as a child, never imagining she'd one day kneel here, condemned. The silver chains bit deeper into her wrists, and she bit back a whimper. Silver. Always silver. The metal that weakened wolves, that kept them from shifting, from accessing the strength that lived in their bones. Darius finally looked at her, and the coldness in his gaze sent ice through her veins. This was the man who'd once smiled at her across the bonfire during the harvest festival. The man who'd defended her when others whispered about her mixed bloodline, about her mother's foreign origins, about how she didn't quite belong. That man was gone. In his place stood the Alpha, carved from duty and tradition. His loyalty to the pack laws absolute. Roxana of the Eastern Quarter. His voice rang out, formal and distant, each word precisely measured. You stand accused of treason against the pack. You conspired with our enemies, the mountain wolves, sharing our patrol routes, our weaknesses, our sacred rituals. The evidence is irrefutable. The punishment is death. She wanted to scream that she was innocent, that she'd been framed, that the letters they'd found in her dwelling weren't hers. But she'd already said all of that during the trial 3 days ago. No one had believed her then. No one would believe her now. The mountain wolves had been raiding their territory for months, hitting their patrols with impossible precision, and when they'd found those damning letters written in her hand, the pack had turned on her like starving wolves on wounded prey. The executioner stepped forward, a massive man named Bahram, his face hidden behind a black hood. The sword he carried was ancient, passed down through generations of pack executioners, its blade etched with runes that were said to prevent the soul from finding peace. A traitor's death. Not just the ending of life but the condemnation of the spirit. Roxana closed her eyes. She thought of her mother, dead 5 years now, her father who'd disappeared when she was 7, claimed by the mountain territory disputes. She thought of the life she'd never live, the mate she'd never find, the children she'd never bear. 23 years old, and this was how her story ended. Any final words? Darius asked the question of formality. She opened her eyes and looked directly at him. I'm innocent. And one day you'll know the truth. I hope you can live with what you've done when that day comes. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, doubt, something human beneath the Alpha's mask. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He raised his hand, and Bahram lifted the sword high. The blade began its descent. And then the world exploded into silver light. It erupted from Darius first, a mark burning into existence on his left forearm, glowing with an intensity that made everyone shield their eyes. He cried out, dropping to his knees, clutching his arm as the mark seared itself into his flesh. The same mark appeared on Roxana's right forearm at the exact same instant, twin flames of light that connected them across the distance, a silver thread visible only for a heartbeat before it solidified into identical crescent moons on their skin. The mate mark. The one bond that superseded all pack laws. The one connection that even an Alpha could not deny. Bahram froze mid-swing, the blade stopping inches from Roxana's neck. The gathered pack erupted into chaos, voices rising in shock and confusion. The elders pushed forward, their aged faces twisted in disbelief. This couldn't happen. This wasn't supposed to happen. The mate bond revealed itself in its own time, but never like this, never at the moment of execution, never to save the condemned. Darius stared at his arm, at the mark that burned silver against his bronze skin. Then he looked at Roxana, really looked at her, and she saw the moment everything changed in his eyes. The mate bond didn't just connect bodies, it connected souls, minds, emotions. In that instant he felt everything she felt. Her innocence crashed into him like a wave, absolute and undeniable. Her terror, her grief, her desperate love for the pack that was killing her. And beneath it all, something else. Something she'd hidden even from herself. Her love for him. "Stop," Darius commanded, his voice hoarse. "Release her. Now." The beta, a grizzled warrior named Cyrus, stepped forward. "Alpha, the law is clear. The trial has concluded. The sentence must be carried out. She's my mate." Darius roared, and the alpha power in his voice drove everyone back a step. "The moon herself has marked us. Would you have me execute my own mate? Would you defy the goddess's will?" The eldest of the council, a woman named Parisa who'd served the pack for 70 years, moved closer. Her eyes were sharp despite her age, and she studied both marks carefully. "The goddess's timing is interesting. Convenient, some might say. Are you suggesting the mate bond can be faked?" Darius challenged. "I'm suggesting," Parisa said carefully, "that we have never seen a mate mark appear at such a moment. The bond typically manifests at first touch, or during the full moon ceremony, or in moments of great intimacy. Not seconds before execution. Perhaps," another elder, Hormuz, added, "the goddess intervenes when justice is about to be subverted by mortal error." The pack buzzed with debate. Roxana remained kneeling, hardly daring to breathe. The mark on her arm still burned, and through it she could feel Darius's turmoil. Duty warred with destiny in his heart. The mate bond was sacred, but so were pack laws. She was a traitor in the eyes of the pack, but innocent in the truth of her soul, a truth he now felt as clearly as his own heartbeat. Darius stood slowly, his hand still pressed against his marked arm. "Cyrus, remove her chains." "Alpha." "That's a command, Beta." Cyrus's jaw tightened, but he obeyed. He approached Roxana with obvious reluctance, producing the silver key that would release the chains. The moment the silver fell away from her skin, relief flooded through her. The burning stopped, and strength began returning to her limbs. Darius walked toward her, and the crowd parted before him. When he reached her, he extended his hand. Their marked arms aligned, crescent moons facing each other, and when their skin touched, light flared again. Not as bright as before, but steady, pulsing with the rhythm of two hearts learning to beat as one. He pulled her to her feet, and for a moment they simply stood there, two people caught in the goddess's design, surrounded by a pack that didn't know whether to celebrate or rebel. "The trial," Parisa said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, "was concluded based on evidence. The mate bond does not erase evidence. It does not change the fact that letters in her hand were found, detailing our defenses, promising aid to our enemies. Then the trial was based on lies," Darius said flatly. "I can feel her truth. She's innocent." "The mate bond can cloud judgment," Hormuz warned. "Alpha, we understand this is difficult, but you cannot let personal feelings override your duty to the pack." "Personal feelings." Darius turned on the elder, and there was something dangerous in his eyes. "The mate bond isn't a feeling, old one. It's a truth written into our very souls by the moon goddess herself. If you're suggesting I ignore it, you're suggesting I ignore the foundation of everything we are as wolves." The argument that followed lasted hours. The sun climbed higher in the sky, burning away the dawn's chill. Some pack members drifted away, uncomfortable with the conflict, while others stayed, invested in the outcome. The elders were divided. Some believed the mate bond was absolute and must be honored. Others argued that pack security couldn't be compromised, even for sacred bonds. Throughout it all, Darius kept Roxana's hand in his, the physical connection grounding them both. Through the bond, she could feel his determination, his growing fury at the situation, his absolute certainty in her innocence now that he'd touched her soul. But she could also feel his conflict. He was alpha. His first duty was to the pack, and the pack was fractured, uncertain, afraid. Finally, Parisa raised her hand for silence. "There is precedent," she said, her voice weary. "In the time of Alpha Kave, 200 years ago, a similar situation arose. A warrior was condemned for murder, and his mate bond manifested during his execution. The Alpha at that time made a ruling that has stood in our laws ever since." Everyone leaned forward, eager to hear. The condemned was granted a reprieve of 1 full moon cycle. 30 days to prove their innocence. If proof could be found, they would be restored to full standing in the pack. If not, the mate bond would be severed through the ancient ritual, and the execution would proceed. Horror rippled through Roxana. The ritual Parisa spoke of was dark magic, forbidden except in the most extreme circumstances. It would tear the mate bond apart, leaving both mates broken, incomplete, half alive. Many who underwent it chose to end their lives afterward, unable to bear the emptiness where their mate had been. 30 days, Darius repeated. To prove what the elders and the council couldn't disprove in a week-long trial. To find the truth, Parisa corrected. Perhaps with the mate bond's insight, you'll see what we missed. Or perhaps you'll accept what we found. It wasn't really a choice, and everyone knew it. Either Darius accepted the 30-day reprieve, or he defied the council entirely, which could fracture the pack beyond repair. Civil war had started over less. Agreed, Darius said. 30 days. But she stays with me under my protection. No imprisonment. No guards. She's my mate, and she'll be treated as such. That's highly irregular, Hormuz began. Those are my terms, Darius cut him off. Take them or challenge me for the alpha position right now. Choose. No one challenged. Darius was young for an alpha, only 27, but he was powerful, and no one wanted to face him in combat. The position had come to him when the previous alpha, his father, had died defending the pack from a mountain wolf raid 2 years ago. The crowd dispersed slowly, breaking into clusters of conversation. Some looked at Roxana with hope, others with suspicion, many with confusion. The mate bond was sacred, but so was pack security. How could both be true? Darius led Roxana away from the execution grounds, toward the Alpha's residence at the heart of the pack territory. It was a large stone structure, ancient and imposing, where the pack's leaders had lived for generations. She'd never been inside before. As they walked, pack members watched from doorways and windows, their eyes following the Alpha and his controversial mate. Inside, the Alpha's home was both grand and austere. High ceilings, stone walls decorated with tapestries depicting pack history, furniture carved from dark wood. It smelled of pine and leather and something uniquely Darius, a scent that now called to something deep in Roxana's wolf. He led her to a sitting room and finally released her hand. The loss of contact felt wrong, like missing a limb, but they needed to talk, and the bond made it hard to think clearly when they touched. "I need you to tell me everything," Darius said, pacing in front of the fireplace. "From the beginning. How did those letters end up in your dwelling?" Roxana sank into a chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She hadn't slept properly in days. "I don't know. That's the truth. I came home from the market 3 weeks ago, and Cyrus was there with guards, searching my home. They said they'd received an anonymous tip. They found the letters hidden under the floorboards beneath my bed. And you're certain you didn't write them?" "I swear on my mother's grave, on the moon herself, I didn't write them." "Yes, they're in my handwriting. The elders confirmed that during the trial, but I never wrote those words. I never betrayed the pack." Darius stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her. Before the mate bond, he'd seen her as Roxana, The quiet girl from the Eastern Quarter, the one with the strange foreign mother and the dead traitor father. Now he saw everything. Her strength, her loyalty, her fierce love for the pack that had never fully accepted her. And her innocence, shining like silver light in her soul. Someone set you up, he said. Someone who had access to your dwelling, who could replicate your handwriting perfectly, who knew where to hide the letters so they'd be found. But why? Who would do this to me? I have no enemies, no disputes, no. She stopped. Unless what? Unless it wasn't about me at all. Unless I was just convenient. Understanding dawned in Darius's eyes. Someone needed a traitor to be found. The raids were damaging pack morale, making me look weak as alpha. Finding the traitor would restore confidence, show that we'd plugged the leak. And you? I was perfect, Roxana finished bitterly. The outsider. The one nobody would really defend. My father was killed in disputed territory, which some always said meant he'd gone over to the mountain wolves. My mother was foreign, never fully trusted. I have no close family, few strong friends. Who would fight for me? I would, Darius said softly. If I'd known. If I'd looked closer. If I hadn't been so quick to believe the evidence. The guilt in his voice was palpable through the bond. He'd been one of her judges during the trial. He'd heard her pleas of innocence and dismissed them like everyone else. He'd signed the execution order himself. You couldn't have known, Roxana said, though the words hurt to speak. The evidence was convincing. Even I don't understand how someone replicated my handwriting so perfectly. There are ways, Darius said grimly. A witch could do it with the right materials. Hair, perhaps, or something else connected to you. Witches. The word hung in the air like smoke. The packs generally avoided witches, their magic sitting uneasily alongside wolf nature. But desperate wolves sometimes sought them out for things that couldn't be achieved through normal means. So we're looking for someone who had access to my dwelling, access to witch magic, and a reason to want me discredited, Roxana summarized. That's not much to go on. It's more than we had an hour ago, Darius countered. An hour ago we thought we'd caught the traitor. Now we know the traitor is still out there, likely someone close enough to have orchestrated all of this. A knock at the door interrupted them. Cyrus entered without waiting for permission. His expression hard. Alpha, the council requests your presence. There are concerns about the sleeping arrangements. Darius's expression darkened. I've already stated my terms. The elders feel it would be more appropriate for the condemned, for Roxana, to be housed separately during the investigation. She's my mate. She stays with me. Alpha, Cyrus said carefully. The pack is already unsettled. Having her here in the Alpha's residence, while she's still under sentence of death, it sends a complicated message. Good, Darius said flatly. Let it be complicated. Let the pack question. Maybe they should question how quickly they accepted her guilt. Maybe they should question what else they've accepted without proof. Cyrus's jaw tightened. You're playing a dangerous game, Darius. The pack needs stability, not doubt. The pack needs truth, Darius shot back. Now get out. Tell the council I'll meet with them tomorrow. Tonight, I'm going to learn everything I can about the mate the goddess gave me while everyone else was ready to kill her. After Cyrus left, tension thick in his wake, Roxana stood. He's right, you know. Could stay somewhere else. We don't have to push the pack this hard. Yes, we do, Darius said. Because the moment I treat you as anything less than my mate, the moment I act like I'm ashamed of this bond or uncertain about it, that's when the pack will know we're weak. That's when whoever set you up will know their plan worked, at least partially. He crossed to her, taking both her hands in his. The mate marks flared warm where their skin touched. Besides, he added, his voice softer, I almost lost you today. I'm not letting you out of my sight. The confession was raw, vulnerable in a way alphas rarely allowed themselves to be. Through the bond, Roxana felt the depths of his fear, the horror he'd experienced watching the sword fall before the marks appeared. In that moment something shifted between them. This wasn't just about proving her innocence anymore. It was about two people learning to be mates under the worst possible circumstances. That night, sleep proved impossible for both of them. Darius gave Roxana his bedroom and took the couch downstairs, but neither could rest. The mate bond pulled at them, uncomfortable with the distance. Around midnight, Roxana finally gave up and went downstairs. She found Darius standing by the window, staring out at the pack grounds. The moon was 3/4 full, casting silver light over everything. In 9 days it would be full, and the pack would hold the monthly ceremony. Would she still be alive to see it? "Can't sleep either?" she asked quietly. He turned, and in the moonlight she could see the exhaustion on his face. "The bond is louder than I expected. I feel it too. Like something pulling at my chest. My mother told me once that the first few days after the mate bond appears are the hardest. The souls are trying to align, and everything feels too intense, too overwhelming." Roxana moved closer. "Did she tell you it would appear while you were ordering your mate's execution?" A wry smile touched his lips despite the grim topic. That particular scenario didn't come up in her lessons. They stood in silence for a moment, and then Darius asked the question that had clearly been burning in his mind all evening. "Why didn't you tell anyone that you loved me?" Heat flooded Roxana's face. Through the bond he'd felt that truth, the secret she'd kept locked away for years. "Because you're the alpha and I'm nobody." 'Cause it was hopeless. Because even thinking about it felt presumptuous. "You're not nobody," Darius said firmly. "You never were. I just didn't see it. Didn't see you. I saw the quiet girl who kept to herself, who didn't cause trouble, who existed on the edges of pack life. I didn't see your strength, your loyalty, your fierce heart." "You weren't supposed to," Roxana said. "I made sure of it. Being invisible felt safer." "Well, you're not invisible anymore. You're the alpha's mate, and we're going to prove your innocence. And then you're going to stand at my side as you were always meant to." The confidence in his voice made her want to believe him. But doubt still gnawed at her. What if we can't prove it? What if the 30 days pass and we have nothing? Darius's expression hardened. "Then we run. I'll give up the alpha position, and we'll leave these lands together. I won't let them sever the bond. I won't let them take you from me." The declaration stunned her. "You'd give up everything. The pack, your position, your duty." "You're my mate," he said simply. "The goddess chose you for me. That's not a choice I can unmake, and it's not one I want to unmake. If the pack can't see your innocence, then the pack doesn't deserve either of us." Before she could respond, before she could process the enormity of what he was offering, he pulled her into his arms. The mate bond sang at the contact, and for the first time since the marks appeared, something settled in both of them. This was right. This was where they belonged. "We're going to find the truth," Darius murmured against her hair. "I promise you that. Whoever did this to you, whoever tried to destroy you, they're going to answer for it." But finding the truth proved harder than either of them anticipated. The next morning, Darius began his investigation in earnest. He started with Roxana's dwelling, examining every inch of the small home where she'd lived alone since her mother's death. The floorboards where the letters had been hidden had been pried up and replaced. No evidence remained. He interviewed her neighbors, asking about any unusual activity in the weeks before the letters were found. Most remembered nothing helpful. A few mentioned seeing various pack members passing through the area, but the eastern quarter was near the training grounds, so warriors and guards were always around. The letters themselves had been locked away in the council's records room. Darius retrieved them, studying them carefully. They were written in Roxana's neat, precise script, detailing patrol schedules, weak points in the territory boundaries, and even private council discussions about defense strategies. If he hadn't felt her innocence through the mate bond, he would have convicted her himself based on these alone. I need to speak with someone who understands forgery, Darius told Cyrus 3 days into the investigation. Someone who can tell me how this could have been done. Cyrus hesitated. There's a scholar in the northern quarter, an old scribe named Farhad. He's studied ancient documents for years. If anyone can spot a forgery, it's him. Farhad was indeed old, his hands gnarled with age, his eyes clouded but still sharp with intelligence. Darius brought him the letters, and the old wolf studied them for hours, using various tools and techniques Darius didn't fully understand. Finally, Farhad set down his magnifying glass and looked up. It's perfect. Too perfect, actually. That's the tell. What do you mean? Darius leaned forward eagerly. Real handwriting has variation. Pressure changes, slight differences in letter formation, the natural tremors that come from being alive and breathing. These letters. He tapped the paper. They're mechanically perfect. Every is identical. Every crossed at the exact same height. It's like they were copied from a template. So they're forged. Without question. But proving it. Farhad shook his head. The council will say I'm an old fool seeing what I want to see. They'll say handwriting practice could make someone this consistent. Unless you can find who did it and how, my analysis won't save your mate. Darius thanked him and left feeling both vindicated and frustrated. He was right. Roxana was innocent. But being right didn't matter if he couldn't prove it in a way the council would accept. Meanwhile, Roxana wasn't sitting idle. She'd begun her own investigation, working from a different angle. She made a list of everyone who had access to her dwelling, everyone who might have been able to plant the letters. The list was long. Guards, neighbors, friends, even the traders she bought supplies from. She cross-referenced this with people who had the opportunity to learn her handwriting. That narrowed it considerably. Only a handful of wolves had seen her writing regularly enough to replicate it. One name appeared on both lists: Shireen. Shireen worked in the pack's administrative office, recording council decisions and maintaining the pack's historical documents. She was young, ambitious, and had been friendly with Roxana, or at least friendly enough. They'd shared meals occasionally, talked about pack gossip, the normal surface interactions of packmates who weren't quite friends but weren't strangers either. Shireen would have had access to Roxana's handwriting through various pack documents and forms. And she lived 2 dwellings down from Roxana in the eastern quarter, close enough to observe her comings and goings. When Roxana presented her theory to Darius that evening, he listened carefully. But what's her motive? Why would Shireen want to frame you? I don't know, Roxana admitted. We were never close, but we never had problems either. Unless what? Unless someone paid her to do it. Or coerced her. Or unless she's working with whoever is really feeding information to the mountain wolves. The next day, Darius brought Shireen in for questioning. She came willingly, showing no signs of guilt or nervousness. She was a petite woman with dark hair and quick, intelligent eyes. When Darius asked about her relationship with Roxana, she smiled. We're friends, Alpha. Or we were. I was as shocked as anyone when the letters were found. Roxana always seemed so loyal. Did you ever see her writing? Handle documents she'd written? Of course. We both worked on various pack records. Why? Darius showed her the forged letters. 'Cause these are too perfect. Someone with training in document work might have been able to create them. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Shireen's eyes. Are you accusing me, Alpha? I'm investigating. There's a difference. I would never betray the pack. And I certainly wouldn't frame Roxana. We were friends. But something in her voice rang false to Darius's ears. Or maybe it was the mate bond, letting him feel Roxana's certainty that there was more to this story. Either way, he decided to push. Where were you the night before the letters were found? I was home. Alone. Asleep. No one can verify that. I live alone, Alpha. Like many unmated wolves do. Darius studied her carefully. She was nervous now, definitely hiding something. But nervousness didn't equal guilt, and he couldn't arrest her on suspicion alone. After she left, Cyrus pulled Darius aside. "You're grasping at straws, Darius. Shireen is loyal. She's worked for the pack for 5 years without a single issue." "Then help me prove it," Darius challenged. "Unless you'd rather I keep chasing ghosts." Something complicated crossed Cyrus's expression. "I'd rather you accept that sometimes the obvious answer is the correct one." The letters were found in Roxana's dwelling. They're in her handwriting. "The mate bond is clouding your judgment. Or it's clearing it," Darius shot back. "Tell me, Cyrus, if your mate was condemned to death, and you felt in your soul that she was innocent, would you just accept it? Would you let her die because the evidence looked bad?" Cyrus's silence was answer enough. That night, 16 days into the investigation, everything changed. Roxana woke to find Darius gone from the house. A note on the kitchen table said he'd gone to meet with border scouts who'd reported unusual activity. He'd be back by dawn. But dawn came and went, and Darius didn't return. By mid-morning, Roxana's worry had transformed into full panic. The mate bond felt strange, stretched thin, like he was too far away or something was blocking the connection. She went to Cyrus, demanding to know where the Alpha had gone. "He went to the northern border," Cyrus said, his own concern evident. "The scouts reported mountain wolves moving in force. He took a small team to investigate. And he hasn't reported back." "Not yet. But it's only been a few hours. Sometimes scouting missions take longer than expected." But Roxana's instincts screamed that something was wrong. Through the mate bond she felt not pain exactly, but distress, confusion, and something else, anger. "I'm going after him," she announced. "You're under investigation," Cyrus reminded her. "You're not supposed to leave pack grounds without permission." "Then arrest me." "But I'm going." In the end, Cyrus assembled a search party. They followed Darius's trail north, toward the disputed territory where the borders blurred and conflicts were common. The signs of a fight became evident before they reached the border. Trampled ground, blood on the stones, the acrid smell of silver weapons. They found Darius's team unconscious, drugged with silver-laced darts. But Darius himself was gone. On a tree, carved in clumsy letters, was a message. "The Alpha for the traitor. Midnight. Stone Ridge." Roxana's blood turned to ice. Stone Ridge was deep in mountain wolf territory. This was a trap, obviously. But it was also a trade offer. "We're not negotiating with them," Cyrus said immediately. "We'll mount a rescue mission." "There's no time," Roxana cut him off. "Midnight is 8 hours away. We'd never get a team together, get approval from the council, and mount an assault in that time. And even if we could, they'd kill him the moment they saw us coming. So what do you suggest? That we just hand you over?" "Yes," Roxana said simply. "That's exactly what I suggest." The argument that followed was fierce. Cyrus refused to allow it. The other warriors pointed out that trading one prisoner for another solved nothing. But Roxana had made up her mind. "He's my mate," she said quietly. "The goddess chose us for each other. I won't let him die for me. I won't let him make that sacrifice." "And if they kill you both?" Cyrus demanded. "Then at least we'll die together instead of apart." In the end they compromised. Roxana would go to Stone Ridge, but she wouldn't go alone. A small team would shadow her, staying far enough back to avoid detection but close enough to intervene if possible. As midnight approached, Roxana climbed the steep path to Stone Ridge alone. The mountain wolves' territory was harsher than pack lands, all rocks and thin soil and twisted trees. The ridge itself was a flat outcropping of stone that overlooked a steep valley. She arrived to find Darius bound with silver chains, surrounded by mountain wolves. Their alpha, a scarred warrior named Shabazz, stepped forward. "The traitor comes willingly," he said, his voice mocking. "How noble!" "Let him go," Roxana demanded. "I'm here. I'm turning myself in." Honor the trade. Trade? Shabazz laughed. There's no trade, girl. We'll keep you both. 2 pack wolves for the price of 1. Darius struggled against his chains, fury radiating from him. Through the mate bond, Roxana felt his desperation, his rage at being used as bait. But Roxana had prepared for this possibility. She'd spent the journey here thinking through every angle, every option. And she'd realized something important. You made a mistake, she told Shabazz calmly. Did I? You assumed I was the traitor. You assumed those letters were real. But I never wrote them. I never betrayed my pack. Which means your raid succeeded for a different reason. You have a real traitor, someone actually feeding you information. And by kidnapping the Alpha and demanding me, you've revealed that you still need that information source. You've revealed that you don't actually have all the intelligence you need. Shabazz's smile faded slightly. More than that, Roxana continued. You've revealed that you're desperate. Our pack has been tightening security, changing protocols. Your raids have been less successful lately. You needed to shake things up, cause chaos, maybe even trigger a succession crisis if you killed the Alpha. But you made one critical error. And what's that? You trusted whoever told you I was the traitor. You trusted your inside source when they said bringing me here would accomplish your goals. But what if they lied? What if they're playing you just like they played my pack? Uncertainty rippled through the mountain wolves. Shabazz's eyes narrowed. You're stalling. I'm thinking, Roxana corrected. Which is more than you did when you planned this. Tell me, Alpha Shabazz, who told you about those letters? Who convinced you I was betraying my pack? Who gave you the idea to kidnap Darius and demand me in trade? That's not. Because that same person is the one who actually wrote those letters. That same person is the one who's been feeding you information. And if you kill us, you'll never know who they are. You'll never know if they're truly loyal to you or just using you for their own purposes. Shabazz studied her for a long moment. He was a warrior, not a politician, and she could see the wheels turning in his mind. Finally he said, You're suggesting we work together. I'm suggesting we have a common enemy. Someone who wants both our packs weakened and at war. Someone who benefits from our conflict. Behind her, Roxana heard movement. The rescue team Cyrus had sent was moving into position. But she raised her hand slightly, signaling them to wait. This had to play out. Darius finally found his voice, hoarse from the silver chains. She's right. Think about it, Shabazz. Your raids have been succeeding, yes, but have they accomplished anything meaningful? You strike, we reinforce. You hit another location, we adapt. It's a pattern designed to keep both packs bleeding resources and attention. Who benefits from that? Shabazz's lieutenant, a lean wolf with calculating eyes, stepped forward. The Western Territories. They've been expanding while we fight each other. Or the Witch Covens, another mountain wolf suggested. They've been buying up land between our territories, land neither pack can control while we're at war. The pieces were falling into place, but not the way Roxana had expected. This wasn't just about framing her. It was bigger. Someone had been orchestrating conflict between the packs for months, maybe years, and her frame job was just one move in a larger game. Release him, Shabazz ordered suddenly. Remove the chains. His wolves hesitated but obeyed. The moment the silver chains fell away from Darius, he surged to his feet, reaching Roxana in 3 long strides. He pulled her against him, and the mate bond flooded with relief so intense it nearly brought her to her knees. Are you hurt? He demanded, hands running over her arms, checking for injuries. I'm fine. Are you? Better now. Shabazz watched this reunion with something like grudging respect. The mate bond. We heard rumors it manifested during her execution. The mountain winds carry stories quickly. Then you know why I won't let her die, Darius said, his arm protectively around Roxana's shoulders. Mate bond or not, she's innocent. And we're going to prove it. By finding who really wrote those letters, Shabazz finished. He was quiet for a moment, then made a decision that clearly cost him. 3 months ago, I received a letter offering to provide intelligence about your pack. It was signed with a symbol, a raven perched on a crescent moon. The writer claimed to be loyal to neither pack, only to profit and chaos. They wanted payment in territory rights and precious metals. You accepted, Darius said flatly. Of course I accepted. We've been losing ground for years. Your pack is larger, wealthier, better positioned. The information leveled the field. Did you ever meet this person? No. All communication was through dead drops. A hollow tree at the border, a specific cave, places like that. They'd leave information, I'd leave payment. Roxana's mind was racing. When was the last drop? 5 days ago. They told me about your mate bond manifesting, about the 30-day reprieve, about this location being perfect for an ambush. Shabaz's expression darkened. They suggested I could eliminate both of you and throw your pack into chaos, making a takeover easier. But you hesitated, Roxana guessed. Because something felt wrong. Because I'm a warrior, not an assassin. And because killing a mated pair is. He struggled for words. It's against the old laws. The oldest laws. Before packs and territories, when wolves ran free under the moon goddess's eye, mated pairs were sacred. I may be desperate, but I'm not forsaken. Darius exchanged a look with Roxana. Through the bond, they communicated silently, coming to the same conclusion. We need to find this mysterious informant, Darius said aloud. When's the next scheduled drop? 3 days from now. The hollow tree on the eastern border. Then we set a trap. You leave a message requesting a face-to-face meeting. Make it urgent. Tell them something went wrong with tonight's ambush, that you need to adjust the plan in person. And if they refuse, they won't, Roxana said with certainty. They've invested too much in this scheme. They'll want to know what went wrong, and they'll be confident they can manipulate you face-to-face. The alliance was tenuous, built on mutual need rather than trust, but it was something. Shabazz agreed to the plan, and Darius and Roxana returned to Pack Lands with a rescue team. The journey back was tense, everyone aware that they were running out of time. 14 days remained of the 30-day reprieve. When they arrived at the Alpha's residence, they found the council waiting. Parisa stood at the center, her expression grave. Alpha Darius, she said formally. You left Pack Lands without informing the council, took warriors on an unauthorized mission, and endangered yourself recklessly. The council demands an explanation. Darius didn't flinch. I was kidnapped. Roxana rescued me. And in doing so, we discovered that she was indeed framed, and that our pack is being manipulated by an outside force. He explained everything. Shabaza's revelations, the mysterious informant, the larger conspiracy. The council listened in silence, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. Even if this is true, Horma said carefully, it doesn't prove Roxana's innocence. This informant could be her accomplice, not her replacement. Then explain the mate bond, Darius challenged. Explain how the moon goddess herself marked us as mates if Roxana truly betrayed everything we stand for. The goddess's will is not always clear to mortal understanding, Parisa said, but there was doubt in her voice now. However, your point is noted. If you can capture this informant and prove they wrote the letters, that would indeed vindicate your mate. We have 3 days, Darius said. The informant is meeting with Shabazz at the border. We'll be there and we'll take them alive. The council agreed, but only after intense debate. Some wanted to send warriors immediately to arrest Shabazz for kidnapping the Alpha. Others wanted to abandon the plan entirely and simply wait out the 30 days, then proceed with the execution if no other proof emerged. In the end, Darius's authority as Alpha barely held sway. Those 3 days were the longest of Roxana's life. She and Darius planned the ambush carefully, selecting warriors they trusted absolutely. Cyrus was among them. His earlier skepticism replaced by grim determination. If there truly was a traitor in their midst, He wanted them caught as badly as anyone. They positioned themselves around the hollow tree 2 hours before the scheduled meeting time. The tree stood in neutral territory, ancient and gnarled, its hollow trunk large enough to hide messages or small packages. The forest here was dense, providing good cover for the ambush team. Shabazz arrived exactly on time, his own warriors hidden nearby. This was the dangerous part. 2 packs working together, still not fully trusting each other, but united by a common goal. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then began its descent. Roxana started to wonder if the informant would show at all. Maybe they'd sensed the trap. Maybe they'd abandoned the scheme entirely. Then she caught a scent on the wind. Wolf, but pack wolf. Someone from their own territory. She signaled Darius, and he nodded. He'd caught it too. They waited, barely breathing, as footsteps approached through the undergrowth. The figure that emerged into the clearing made Roxana's blood run cold. It was Cyrus. The beta walked calmly to the hollow tree, reaching inside to retrieve the message Shabazz had left. He read it quickly, his expression unchanging, then pulled out a small notebook and began writing a reply. Darius stood from his hiding place, and the other warriors followed suit, surrounding the clearing. Cyrus looked up slowly, showing no surprise at all. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," he said calmly. "You?" Darius's voice was thick with betrayal. "You've been feeding information to the mountain wolves. You framed Roxana. You're the traitor." "Traitor is such an ugly word," Cyrus replied. "I prefer strategic opportunist. You're my beta. My father's beta before me. You've served this pack for 20 years. I've served myself for 20 years, Cyrus corrected. Your father understood that. He knew I was ambitious, knew I wanted more than just being the warrior who stood in the Alpha's shadow. So he gave me opportunities, power, influence. But you," his eyes hardened. "You're young, idealistic, too soft. You make decisions based on sentiment rather than strength. You were weakening the pack. So you decided to destroy it instead." Roxana couldn't keep the anger from her voice. "I decided to reshape it," Cyrus said. "The war with the mountain wolves was designed to force a leadership challenge. When the pack lost confidence in Darius, I would challenge him for the alpha position. I would win. I'm older, more experienced, and in a time of war, the pack would choose the stronger warrior. Once I was alpha, I would end the war on my terms, having positioned myself as the savior who could finally bring peace." "By selling out your own people," Darius said, his voice deadly quiet. "By making strategic sacrifices. Yes, some wolves died in the raids I facilitated. That's war. But the pack would have been stronger under my leadership. And Roxana, why frame her? Because you were investigating. Getting too close to realizing the raids were too well informed. I needed a scapegoat, someone to take the fall and satisfy the pack's need for justice. She was perfect. No strong family ties, no political power, already viewed with some suspicion because of her background." He smiled coldly. "I didn't account for the mate bond, though. That was unfortunate timing." Rage flooded through Darius, hot and primal. His eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. Around them, the other warriors tensed, waiting for the order to attack. But it was Shabazz who spoke next, stepping out from his own hiding place. "You played me, beta. Made me think I was gaining an advantage when really you were using my pack as a weapon against your own." "Nothing personal," Cyrus said with a shrug. "You were a means to an end." "How did you forge Roxana's handwriting so perfectly?" Darius demanded. He needed to understand, needed to hear the full confession. "There's a witch in the Western Territories, a crone who specializes in replication magic. I brought her samples of Roxana's writing, along with a few strands of hair I collected from her dwelling. With those components she could produce perfect forgeries. The letters were her work. And the anonymous tip about where to find them. I sent it myself, anonymously. Then I volunteered to lead the search, made sure the letters were found exactly where I'd planted them. It was all laid out now, every piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Cyrus had orchestrated everything: the raids, the frame job, the kidnapping. He'd manipulated both packs like pieces on a game board, all for his own ambition. "You're under arrest," Darius said, his voice carrying the full weight of alpha command. "For treason, for conspiracy, for the murder of pack members who died in the raids you facilitated. You'll stand trial before the full council." "I think not," Cyrus said, and suddenly he was moving, faster than anyone anticipated. He'd hidden a weapon in his clothes, a silver blade, probably the same one he'd planned to use on Darius if the opportunity arose. He lunged forward, not at Darius, but at Roxana, clearly calculating that the mate bond made her the better target. But he'd underestimated two things. First, Roxana's speed. She'd been preparing for a fight, her wolf close to the surface, and she dodged his first strike. Second, the mate bond itself. The moment Cyrus's blade came anywhere near Roxana, Darius moved within human speed, the protective instinct of a mated wolf overriding everything else. He hit Cyrus like a freight train, both of them going down in a tangle of limbs. The silver blade went flying. They shifted mid-fight, two wolves tearing at each other with teeth and claws. The other warriors scattered, giving them space for what had become a formal challenge, even if neither had issued the traditional words. Alpha against Beta, the oldest story in wolf hierarchies. The fight was brutal and short. Cyrus was skilled, experienced, dangerous. But Darius fought with the fury of someone defending their mate, and that made all the difference. Within minutes, he had Cyrus pinned, teeth at his throat, the submission hold absolute. Cyrus shifted back to human form, defeated. "End it," he said. "Kill me now. I won't live as a traitor in chains." Darius shifted back as well, breathing hard. "No. You'll face the council. You'll face every pack member you betrayed. And you'll tell them everything, name every contact, every conspiracy, every secret you sold. You'll spend the rest of your life making up for what you've done." They bound Cyrus with silver and hauled him back to pack lands. The revelation that the Beta himself was the traitor sent shockwaves through the pack. Emergency council sessions were called. Cyrus was interrogated extensively, and he confessed to everything, perhaps hoping that cooperation might earn him some mercy. It wouldn't. The penalty for treason was death, and no amount of information could change that. But for Roxana, the confession meant vindication. The council formally withdrew all charges against her. The execution order was nullified. She was declared innocent before the full pack, her name cleared, her honor restored. The relief should have been overwhelming, but instead, Roxana felt numb. She'd been so close to death, had watched the sword fall toward her neck, had spent weeks knowing she might not survive the 30-day reprieve. Now that it was over, she didn't know how to process it. Darius found her that evening, standing alone on the overlook where pack members went to think and watch the sunset. He'd been dealing with council matters all day, securing the peace treaty with Shabaz's pack, managing the transition to a new Beta, handling the fallout from Cyrus's betrayal. "Hey," he said softly, coming to stand beside her. "Hey yourself, Alpha. Don't. Not right now. Right now I'm just Darius, and you're just Roxana, and we're just two people who almost lost everything." She leaned against him, and his arm came around her shoulders. The mate bond hummed contentedly at the contact, satisfied and settled in a way it hadn't been since it first appeared. "I keep thinking about that moment," Roxana said quietly. "When the sword was falling. I was so certain I was going to die. Accepted it. And then the marks appeared, and everything changed in an instant." "The goddess's timing," Darius murmured. "My mother used to say the moon goddess never intervenes early. She waits until the very last moment, until all mortal options are exhausted, and then she acts. I used to think it was just a story. But now we're living proof." They stood in silence for a while, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Below them, the pack went about its evening routines, preparing meals, training, caring for children. Life continued as it always did, even after crisis and revelation. What happens now? Roxana asked. With us, I mean. The mate bond appeared to save my life, but we barely know each other. We've spent the last weeks investigating and fighting and surviving, but we haven't had time to just be mates. Darius turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Then we take that time. We learn each other properly. We build what the goddess started. And the pack. How do they feel about having me as their alpha's mate? They'll adjust. Some already see you as a hero who helped expose the real traitor. Others will take more time. But they'll come around because I'm not giving them a choice. And because you'll prove yourself worthy 1,000 times over just by being you. No pressure then, she said with a weak smile. He laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. The first real laugh she'd heard from him since all of this began. Maybe a little pressure. But you've already survived execution and a conspiracy and a kidnapping. I think you can handle a few skeptical pack members. The formal mating ceremony was held during the next full moon, 23 days after the mate marks had first appeared. The entire pack gathered, along with representatives from Shabaza's mountain wolves, cementing the new alliance between the territories. Under the silver light of the full moon, Darius and Roxana pledged themselves to each other, speaking the ancient words that bound mate to mate, soul to soul. When they kissed, the mate marks on their arms blazed with light, visible to everyone present, the goddess's approval shining for all to see. The pack howled their acceptance, the sound rising into the night sky, a song of celebration and new beginnings. Afterwards, at the feast, Roxana found herself surrounded by pack members who wanted to congratulate her, to apologize for doubting her, to welcome her properly as their alpha's mate. It was overwhelming and wonderful and exhausting all at once. Shireen approached hesitantly, her eyes downcast. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I never believed you were guilty, but I didn't speak up during the trial. I was afraid of going against the council's judgment, afraid of being seen as a traitor sympathizer. My silence was its own kind of betrayal. Roxana studied the younger woman for a moment, then smiled. Fear is understandable. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. You're speaking up now. That's what matters. Relief flooded Shireen's face, and she nodded gratefully before melting back into the crowd. Later, when the celebration had wound down and most of the pack had retired to their homes, Darius and Roxana finally found themselves alone in the Alpha's residence. Their residence now. She still wasn't quite used to that. Tired? Darius asked, pulling her close. Exhausted. But the good kind. The kind that comes from surviving something impossible and coming out stronger. You know, he said thoughtfully, I've been thinking about what Parisa said during the first council meeting. About how the mate bond had never appeared at such a moment, right before an execution. What about it? I don't think it was the first time. I think it's happened before, maybe many times. But we only remember the stories where the mate bond appeared at nice, convenient moments. The dramatic rescues get forgotten or dismissed as myth because they're too impossible, too convenient. But maybe the goddess has been saving innocent lives this way for centuries, and we just stopped believing in her interventions. Roxana considered this. So you think we're part of a pattern? I think we're part of a truth that people forgot. And maybe our story will help others remember that the goddess doesn't abandon her children, even when all hope seems lost. 3 months later, Roxana stood before the Pack Council in a very different capacity than her last appearance. This time, she was there as a full member of the Pack leadership, working alongside Darius to strengthen the bonds between their pack and the mountain wolves. The alliance had proven valuable. Trade agreements had been established. Joint patrols prevented rogue wolves from causing trouble in either territory, and the witch covens that had been buying up land during the conflict found themselves facing a united wolf front. The Western territories had tried to exploit the situation, sending envoys with offers of trade that were clearly designed to drive wedges between the newly allied packs. But Roxana had helped negotiate a treaty that satisfied everyone's needs without compromising either pack's sovereignty. Her skill at diplomacy, honed during years of navigating pack politics as an outsider, proved invaluable. "You're a natural at this," Darius told her after one particularly successful negotiation. "Better than I am, honestly." "You're good at the strong leadership, the warrior side of being alpha," Roxana said. "I'm good at the talking, the finding common ground. We complement each other. The way mates should." It wasn't always easy. There were still pack members who looked at Roxana with suspicion, who couldn't quite forget that she'd been hours from execution. There were mountain wolves who resented the alliance, who saw it as weakness rather than strength. And there were nights when Roxana woke from nightmares about the executioner's blade, about silver chains, about dying alone and condemned. But Darius was always there, pulling her close, reminding her through the mate bond that she was safe, she was loved, she was home. And gradually, the nightmares faded, replaced by dreams of the future they were building together. 6 months after the mate marks appeared, Roxana discovered she was pregnant. The news sent joy rippling through the pack. A new generation, born of the alpha pair, proof of the strength of the bond the goddess had forged. Darius was ecstatic, though also terrified in the way new fathers always are. "What if I'm not ready?" he asked one night, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "What if I'm not good enough?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Roxana assured him. "The same way we've figured out everything else. Besides, any child of ours will be stubborn and resourceful and probably a handful, but they'll also be loved beyond measure." The baby was born 9 months later, a daughter with her mother's dark hair and her father's strong features. They named her Daria, after an ancient moon goddess, a reminder of the intervention that had saved her mother's life and allowed her to exist at all. As Roxana held her daughter for the first time, watching Darius's face transform with wonder and love, she thought about that morning on the execution grounds. About kneeling in the dirt, waiting for death, certain her story was ending. She thought about the mate mark burning into existence, about the impossible rescue, about everything that had followed. "Thank you," she whispered to the goddess, to fate, to whatever force had intervened. "Thank you for giving me this." The years that followed brought their share of challenges. The pack weathered droughts and harsh winters, political disputes and external threats. But they faced everything together, stronger for the trials they'd already survived. Darius proved to be a wise and fair alpha, and Roxana's reputation as a diplomat and problem solver grew throughout all the territories. More importantly, they were happy. They built a life together that was rich with love, laughter, and the kind of deep partnership that only comes from truly knowing another person's soul. The mate bond that had appeared so dramatically on the execution grounds deepened and matured, becoming not just a mystical connection but a daily choice to love, support, and cherish each other. Their daughter Daria grew into a bright, curious child who loved stories. Her favorite was the tale of how her parents met, or rather, how they almost didn't meet, saved only by the moon goddess's intervention at the last possible moment. Roxana would tell the story, watching Daria's eyes grow wide with wonder, and she'd think about how close they'd all come to not existing. "The goddess always intervenes at the last moment," Daria would say, repeating the lesson her grandmother had taught her father. "She waits until all mortal options are exhausted, and then she acts." "That's right," Roxana would confirm. "And she did exactly that for us. She waited until the very last second, until the blade was falling, and then she showed everyone the truth they couldn't see on their own." One evening, 10 years after the mate marks appeared, Roxana and Darius stood together on the same overlook where they'd stood the night her innocence was proven. Their daughter was safe at home with a trusted pack member, and they'd stolen an hour alone, something that became increasingly rare as leadership responsibilities grew. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Darius asked. "If the marks had appeared 5 seconds later? If I'd been just a fraction slower in commanding Baram to stop?" "All the time," Roxana admitted. "But I try not to dwell on the what-ifs. We're here. We're together. We're building something good. That's what matters. Do you forgive me? For almost He couldn't finish the sentence. Roxana turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. There's nothing to forgive. You didn't know the truth. None of us did. The system failed, and you were part of that system, but you also fought to make it right the moment you understood. That's all anyone can ask. I should have looked harder from the beginning. Should have questioned more, investigated more thoroughly. Darius. She squeezed his hands. We can't change the past. We can only learn from it and build a better future. Which is exactly what we've been doing. He pulled her close, and they stood together watching the sun set over Pack lands that were now truly their shared home. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of the Pack going about their evening routines, the normalcy of daily life continuing in all its beautiful mundanity. I love you, Darius said simply. I don't say it enough, but I love you more than I ever thought possible. I know, Roxana replied, smiling against his chest. The mate bond makes sure I always know. But I love hearing you say it anyway. They stayed on the overlook until the stars emerged, mapping constellations and making quiet plans for the future. There would be more challenges ahead, there always were. But they would face them together, two souls bound by the goddess's mark, proven through fire, unshakable in their connection. The execution grounds where Roxana had nearly died were eventually reconsecrated as a meditation garden, a place of peace rather than judgment. Pack members would go there to think, to pray, to remember that justice required not just laws but wisdom, not just evidence but truth. A stone marker was placed where Roxana had knelt, inscribed with a simple message. Here the moon goddess intervened. Here mercy triumphed over vengeance. Here two souls found each other at the edge of the abyss. Young wolves would visit the garden and hear the story, and they would learn the lessons embedded in it. That innocence could be mistaken for guilt. That evidence could be forged. That pride and ambition could corrupt even the most trusted. But also that love was stronger than fear, that truth would eventually emerge, and that the bonds forged by the goddess herself could not be broken by mortal schemes. Cyrus's execution had been carried out with all the solemn ceremony such occasions demanded. To the end, he showed no remorse, only frustration that his plans had been discovered. His betrayal became a cautionary tale, told to remind future generations that honor and loyalty mattered more than personal ambition, and that those who betrayed the Pack betrayed themselves most of all. The alliance with the mountain wolves continued to strengthen over the years. Shabazz and Darius developed a grudging respect that eventually deepened into genuine friendship. Their packs intermarried occasionally, creating bonds of blood that reinforced the political alliance. The borderlands that had once been sites of constant conflict became zones of cooperation, jointly managed and mutually defended. As Roxana's reputation grew, other packs began seeking her counsel for their own disputes. She became known as a mediator and peacemaker, someone who could see past surface conflicts to the deeper issues beneath. She never forgot how close she'd come to being executed for a crime she didn't commit, and that experience made her passionate about justice, about ensuring that no one else suffered the fate she'd narrowly escaped. One day, a young wolf from a distant pack came seeking her help. She'd been accused of theft, and the evidence seemed damning, but she swore she was innocent. As Roxana listened to the girl's story, she saw echoes of her own experience, the perfect evidence, the convenient suspect, the rush to judgment. I'll help you, Roxana promised. But you need to understand something. Proving innocence is harder than it should be. The world is biased toward believing the first explanation, even if it's wrong. You'll need patience, courage, and faith that the truth will eventually emerge. How do you stay patient when everyone thinks you're guilty? The girl asked desperately. Roxana touched the mate mark on her arm, the crescent moon that had saved her life. You remember that the truth exists whether people believe it or not. And you hold on to the hope that someone, somewhere, will be brave enough to look for it. In my case, that someone turned out to be my mate. For you, it might be someone else. But they're out there. The truth always finds its defenders. She took the girl's case, and over the following weeks, she unraveled the real story behind the theft. Like with her own frame job, Someone else had orchestrated the crime and planted evidence on the convenient suspect. By the time Roxana finished her investigation, not only was the girl exonerated, but a network of theft and fraud was exposed, saving the pack from further damage. The girl's alpha thanked Roxana profusely, offering payment and alliance and anything else she might want. Roxana declined everything except one request. Create a review process, she said. A way for the accused to appeal, to demand a deeper investigation before sentence is carried out. My pack has instituted such a process after what happened to me. It saved 2 innocent wolves from execution in the last decade. I'd like to see it become standard across all territories. The idea spread slowly at first, but then gained momentum. Packs began adopting mercy reviews, formal processes for double-checking evidence and conclusions before carrying out irreversible punishments. It wasn't a perfect system. Justice never was. But it was better, fairer, more likely to catch mistakes before they became tragedies. Years turned to decades. Daria grew up, found her own mate, started her own family. More children came, filling the Alpha's residence with noise and joy and the beautiful chaos of a growing pack. Darius's hair began to show silver at the temples, and laugh lines deepened around Roxana's eyes. They grew older together, growing into their roles, into themselves, into the partnership they'd been forged into by crisis and refined by time. On their 20th anniversary as mates, the pack held a celebration that lasted 3 days. Wolves came from all territories to honor the pair who'd become legendary. The alpha who'd almost executed his mate, the mate who'd almost died on the execution grounds, the intervention of the goddess that had saved them both and set in motion changes that rippled across all the pack lands. During the feast, Parisa, now ancient but still sharp, raised her glass in toast. 20 years ago, I stood in judgment of Roxana, she said, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. I believed the evidence presented. I voted for execution. And I was wrong. The goddess's intervention that dawn taught me the most important lesson of my long life. That certainty is dangerous, that we must always remain open to the possibility that we're wrong, and that mercy should always walk hand in hand with justice. To Darius and Roxana, may their bond continue to inspire us toward wisdom. The crowd roared its approval, and Roxana felt tears prick her eyes. She'd long since forgiven everyone involved in her trial and condemnation, but hearing Parisa acknowledge her mistake so publicly meant something profound. Later, alone with Darius in their private chambers, she reflected on the journey. 20 years, she said wonderingly. 20 years since the mate marks appeared. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. It is a lifetime, Darius said, pulling her close. A lifetime we almost didn't get. Every day since then has been a gift. Do you ever wonder why? Why the goddess intervened for us specifically? There must be other innocent wolves who've been condemned over the centuries. Why did she save us and not them? Darius was quiet for a long moment. I've thought about that a lot. And I think, maybe she saves more people than we know. Maybe there are interventions happening all the time, in ways we don't recognize or remember. But also, maybe she saw what we would build together. Not just our family but the changes we'd make, the justice reforms, the alliance between packs. Maybe she saw that saving you would save others down the line. That's a lot of pressure.